What's up, guys? Barry Game here, back with some more Idle Heroes news for September 5th, 2023. And today we have Therapist of Blood Betty's skill card. And kind of like, I almost didn't expect it, but her new Twine ability is blood related, which means the Twine targets will also be bleeding. She sounds like she has a very interesting kit. Ways to give herself energy, things that happen when she has certain percentage of energy, and a lot of just damage reduction, control immunity reduction, tons of things like that. Now, I will say before we even get into it, her tenants really suck. Like, when I say they're bad, they are one of the worst I have ever seen. But we're going to go into this nonetheless. Be positive. I think literally just by looking at, before you guys see it towards the end, before you even see the tenant list, I can guarantee you this is not a first Transcendence hero to build towards. Literally worse tenants than like Volk. I mean, just for raw stats, they're basically all assassins and priests. It's horrible. But I digress. Let's jump into it. Let's talk about this hero because she has a ton of different effects. Okay, so here we are with Betty, Therapist of Blood Betty. She looks really awesome. Her avatar icon that I've seen looks really awesome too. Let's get into her active skill. There is a lot of text here. Let's start with this segment right here. It's called Scarlet Therapy. So basically she's going to be dealing damage to backline enemies, very similar to the regular Betty. Afterward, she releases Chemotherapy on surviving enemies in order from highest to lowest based on their attack. If Chemotherapy is repeatedly released in the duration of her active skill, because there's going to be multiple ways to apply it, its effects change gradually. What it basically means is as it applies to extra targets, it doesn't do as much, but I'll show you guys here in a second. Chemotherapy deals attack damage to the target, reduces by a certain percentage for each repeated release of this, and inflicts damage equal to a certain percentage of their max HP, capped at a certain amount as well. But this part actually increases based on the numbers of time it's released. So as they get to be lower attack, it actually is going to do more damage. Caps, of course, at a certain percentage of her attack, and then blood has a chance to put blood binding twine. This is the brand new twine effect. The target for several rounds reduces the chance by a certain percentage for each repeated release. Very interesting. What is blood binding twine? Well, this is the new control effect for twine. Targets with blood binding are unable to release basic attacks, extra attacks, or counterattacks. That's all standard for regular twine. However, it says at the end of each round, the inflictor bleeds the target, dealing attack damage for several rounds. So this is going to be a really good like wolf synergy right here potentially. So right here, her main active ability, it has damage in it. It has priority of damage. It has multiple layers of damage. And then beyond that, it has a chance to blood binding twine. We don't know, of course, the chance of that. And of course, we don't know any of the sublimations yet. And her sublimations are probably going to make this even stronger. So that's the main ability here. Very unique how Chemotherapy gets applied to basically all the targets in the back row, starting with the highest attack and moving to the lowest. Of course, having it applied to multiples will change the effects gradually as well. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. Now we jump in over here to her passive skills. First off, we have Bloodletting Ritual. Changes the base attack to deals attack damage to frontline enemies. Again, very much like regular Betty. Reduces their control immunity for several rounds and bleeds them, dealing attack damage. I really wish her basic attack was like the regular Betty, where it had a chance to twine as well. We'll have to see how this plays out, because there's passive ways to actually twine some enemies, I believe, from this hero as well. So we're going to have to talk about that too. But next is Superfluous Oblation. That's a mouthful. When self has more than a certain amount of energy, it triggers Scarlet Therapy without consuming any energy, dealing damage equal to a certain percentage of its original damage. And there's a cap to times this effect, how many times this can be triggered each round. Triggered Scarlet Therapy is considered a passive skill, and its skill level is the same as Superfluous Ablation. At the beginning of each battle or when in a battle as a substitute, it won't be triggered. And you might be wondering what that is. Well, Scarlet Therapy is an interesting one here because I really like how this one sounds. It's basically, it feels like it's a lot like Starwing Jar's ability, where if she has like X amount of energy, like 150, she has a chance to, a better chance to CC the enemies and stuff. It feels very much the same. However, it just happens, it sounds like at the beginning or just any time. It's not going to be at the beginning of battle or when she comes in Trial of Champion as a substitute, but it just seems like it triggers immediately on her receiving that amount of energy. So whether you're Demon Belt energy feeding or the enemies hitting you giving you additional energy, it can happen, it sounds like, at any time, and it doesn't use the energy, which is pretty crazy. Because if you remember, what Scarlet Therapy is the active skill, and this is how it can be repeatedly put on multiple times around. You don't even need to do anything. Now, it is only going to target backline enemies, so it's not like you're going to be able to CC the entire wave or anything like that. But it is interesting that it can be triggered at any time when she hits a certain energy level. And again, we're going to have to see what that number is. So, interesting, because it's also considered a passive skill, which means it's not going to proc things. It's going to get past a lot of things as a passive ability. It's not an active or basic attack. This is really, really interesting. Last passive we have here is Doom Death. Restores self energy and increases all damage reduction for several rounds for every one twined enemy. Now that's really good because this Scarlet Therapy is going to proc a lot with high chances of twining targets. You might have a good chance of twining 4 targets every single round. And then it says at the end of each round, it deals damage equal to a certain percentage of the target's lost HP to each twined enemy, capping at a certain percentage of Betty's attack. Additionally, reduces the rest of the enemy's control immunity for several rounds. That could be absolutely huge as well. We'll have to see how that plays out. We also have her Core of Origin, which usually Core of Origins lately haven't been that meta defining or anything, but it reads, when self releases Scarlet Therapy or triggers Scarlet Therapy, deals attack damage to all blood binding twined enemies and reduces their energy with a chance to reduce extra energy. Deals attack damage to the rest of the enemies with a chance to blood binding twine them for several rounds. This one actually sounds like a really cool one to have for this hero. There's some really good, just like, extra damage synergy on reducing the enemy's energy. This hero sounds promising, and it sounds like exactly what I wanted on a bleed meme team. Now, we do have to get to the worst part of this video, and that is the Tenants. Oh, so we got G-ster in the first spot, an assassin. No, you're going to want to go with Betty here. Betty is going to be the mage. Slot 1, you're going to want to Betty for your Betty. Slot 2, oh my god, we have okay, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. We have the worst 2 Transcendence heroes as her Tenants. Blood-Tide Queen Arania, and of course you have Azrael. I don't know. Why couldn't they put Jara here? Could you imagine an early game account that had Jara in this slot? Again, the icon color, it's just, unless this is wrong, which I don't think it is. Even if I jump on over and take a look at the Facebook post, it said, oh wait, this might be wrong. It does say Phantom Defier Elena here. Ooh, it says Phantom Defier Elena for slot 2 in the English translation, and Blood-Tide Queen Arania for the last spot. Unless that's who she is a tenant for, which might be the case. I don't know. It's confusing because this icon is wrong. We don't know for sure. And then, of course, Azrael here, another assassin, not that great. Natalie's not a horrible one for the end, but if you're not going to want to build her up to a Transcendence, I'm going to petition. I'm going to petition that this slot here, or one of these 2 slots, get Starwing Jar. Because could you imagine building both Starwing Jar and this hero as your first 2 Transcendence heroes? That would be very, very interesting to see how it works out, especially since you're already building, Eloise as your first Transcendence. There's a lot of things that could happen. This Scarlet Therapy could be ridiculously overpowered, or it just might be meh. We'll have to see how it turns out. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about this hero. Let me know what you guys think about these Tenants too. I don't know. It's confusing. We'll have to see. You guys next time.